On May 12, 1999, Nintendo's newest console would be announced when it was still just a sparkle in their eye. Keeping each other on their toes, this was following Sony's announcement of the PlayStation 2 just a few months earlier in March. During its alpha phase, it was known to both Nintendo and the public as Project Dolphin, from which spawned a partnership with IBM to create the powerhouse behind its hardware, the Gecko CPU. Also, fun fact, the graphics card is known as the Flipper. Isn't that cute? I mean, I thought so. It would only be a day before Space World 2000 that Nintendo would finally reveal their newest project. August 24th, 2000 would see the unveiling of the Nintendo Gamecube. At this event, they showcased the 5 splashes the Game Square would be available in: purple, black, silver, gold, and magenta. Eventually, moments before the release, the gold and magenta were scrapped, instead replaced with a signature orange flavor. I mean, that's such eye candy. Now that the release of the GameCube was imminent, it was time for marketing. This was a time where the company really leaned into the Nintendo difference. This was a design philosophy that propelled many of their executive decisions today. The focus on solid and user-friendly architecture was a godsend for any would-be developers. This, coupled with a bold choice to price the console at $200 USD, gave it a competitive edge over both the PlayStation and the Xbox, each at $300 respectively. Both these strategies were in the vein to cater to producers rather than the consumers. If the system had better games, it would sell the best. Or at least, that was the idea. Speaking of sales, how did that go, you might be asking? Poorly. It went poorly. The GameCube had only outperformed the Virtual Boy and the Wii U in terms of worldwide sales. That's not a good track record. Like, at all. In fact, the poor sales were such a public elephant in the room that it was the catalyst for its own controversy within the game development sphere. If the phrase, the Capcom 5, rings a haunting bell to you, you probably already know where this is going. The Capcom 5 were a few select games that were developed to be GameCube exclusives. This would push sales and prove to the public that Nintendo was more than willing to split the pot with third-party developers. These 5 games were Piano 3, Beautiful Joe, Dead Phoenix, Killer 7, and
Resident Evil 4.
Resident Evil 4 was in fact so successful of a release that Capcom Japan got cold feet on making it an exclusive for a console that just wasn't selling well. So they did what any company in their position would do. Stab Nintendo in the back and port it to PlayStation 2 anyways. So much for the chainsaw controller, I guess. Speaking of the chainsaw controller, GameCube marketing was likely the most edgy Nintendo got. I think it had a lot to do with the early 2000s where everything looked and felt kind of like this. I don't really know that it was differentiating enough to stand out from its competition, but there's a kitschy charm to it, even if that's just the nostalgia talking. We've spoken a lot about the commercial mishaps of the console, but that isn't to say that GameCube wasn't home to some of Nintendo's most recognizable and well-selling games. For instance, let's look at the top 5. Super Smash Bros. Melee. Hardly needs an introduction, it's Melee. Dudes are still playing this game for money like now.
Oh no!
Wind Waker was easily my favorite of the franchise aesthetically. Up until Breath of the Wild, I really thought this was the apex of what a Zelda game could achieve stylistically. You also had Super Mario Sunshine, which is kind of the ugly duckling of the Mario games. I think that's a little unfair, but when I hear Toad, I kind of agree.
What's this icky paint-like goop? It's moving!
Mario Kart Double Dash was also an absolute trendsetter. I still really like this game, and I wish they did more with that concept. And then there's Pikmin 2, a game in a franchise that was so staunchly unique. Quiet and quaint, it never failed to paint a world with so much wonder. I chose to do this video because even if the GameCube wasn't a capitalistic juggernaut, it still has some of my favorite games of all time. In the summer of 2005, my family and I were displaced from our homes due to a massive hurricane. Between my cousin and I, we had one GameCube and about 3 games between us. Of those 3, 2 are some of my all-time favorites: Cubivore and Alien Hominid. Cubivore is a game that I feel not a soul talks about. It was an extremely underrated game, and my mom found it at the bottom of a bargain bin. The gameplay loop is pretty simple: eat and grow big. It's really good. Oh, and the soundtrack really slaps. Also, fun fact, the game is worth like almost $500 today. Just a little flex I thought I'd throw in there. Alien Hominid was a remake of the Flash game with the same name. and my cousin and I played the absolute hell out of it, beating it at least 5 times in that 1-month stint. I'm never gonna forget what that game did for me, and for the first time in my life, I really felt like I had something in common with him. I've been a diehard fan of the behemoth ever since, and that's a topic for an entirely new video. Now, I also begged my parents to get me Go-Go Hyper Grind as a kid, and that was probably one of my greatest decisions in life. Game slaps, and this theme, I mean, it goes so hard.
Once again, turn it, hype it up.
So why am I telling you this? Well, they were third-party games. Yeah, their plan worked. Whether or not these games kept the company in the green or not, their strategy brought new talent onto the board. And to this day, these games are highly coveted, and they're sought after. I mean, they're legendary. And it goes without saying that the purple cuboid has well outlived its lifespan. With games like Melee extending its tenure, I doubt sincerely that it's going to fade into obscurity anytime soon. And with the constant remasters of the games from the Gamecube era, come on, man. Nintendo knew this shit was the bomb. We're never gonna have a console with so much personality again. And you know what? I don't mind that. You were such a champ, Gamecube, and nobody's coming for your title. Thanks for everything.